For today's project, we are going to be mechanical engineers and design a pinhole camera. Our pinhole camera will allow us to see the outside world projected through a lens onto our wax paper. Now that we know what we're making, let's make sure that we have all of our materials ready. For this project, you will need 1 square of aluminum foil, which is 1.5 by 1.5 inches. 1 square of wax paper, which is 1.5 by 1.5 inches. 1 9-ounce paper cup. A shoebox. 4 sheets of black construction paper. And a small push pin. Once you have all of these materials ready, you will also need a ruler, some tape, and a pair of scissors. Once you have all of your materials ready, we can start building our project. First, let's grab our box and our sheets of black paper. So we're going to cut these sheets to size, and then we're going to use them to cover all interior surfaces in our box. And then we're going to secure them with tape. This does not have to be precise, but make sure that all of the surfaces are mostly covered, including the top, as well as any holes that might be in the box. I will go ahead and do that now, and remember that the goal is to make the interior all black. Now that I'm done, you'll see that the inside of my box is covered pretty decently with the black paper. Again, it does not have to be precise, and you don't have to get the whole interior, as long as you get the general idea, and there's a lot more black than there was cardboard before. Also, if you have a darker colored tape, maybe blue painter's tape, it might be better to use that as well, as opposed to the white or this more tan tape that I'm using, just so that your interior is as dark as possible when you close it. Once we're done with the inside of the box, let's identify one of these shorter sides. So that will be this side here for me. What we're going to do is we're going to use a ruler to roughly find the middle of this side, and you're going to cut a 1 inch by 1 inch square into the box. So you can also use a pen or pencil to mark this, but you can also freehand it, as it does not have to be precise. And when cutting, make sure to cut all the way through, including the cardboard and the paper that we just placed on the inside, allowing you to see the interior of the box. And you can add some tape between the cardboard and the paper to re-secure it to the side so it doesn't separate. So I will do that now. I'll kind of measure my ruler up. I'll see my box is about 8 inches wide. So I'll puncture the box around 4 inches. And in the center. And be careful when doing this and pushing the scissors into the box. Make sure that you talk to your students about being careful, especially when they move to the inside, and that make sure their hands are not near where they're cutting. Okay, so you can see that I have gone through both the cardboard and the paper, and now I'm going to cut about a 1 inch by 1 inch square through both of these pieces of material. So to do that, I'll kind of cut up a 1/2 inch and down a 1/2 inch in either direction. And then I will start cutting to remove the cardboard from around this area to make it more clean. We don't want any, you want to be careful with this because we don't want any cardboard flakes to interfere with our hole. So try to remove them as completely as possible. And as you can see, I'm making progress on cutting this hole, so I'll continue to kind of expand it. I'm even pulling it with my fingers and then cutting off the cardboard flakes that are coming out. Okay, so I'm pretty satisfied with the size of this hole on the side, but you can see that there's a lot of cardboard pieces that are sticking out, and we want this to be as flat as possible, so I'm going to try to cut those off next with my scissors. Alright, so now that I've cleaned up the opening a little bit more, you can see on the inside that the paper is now separating from where the hole is. And I want it to kind of be as flush as possible, so I'm just going to add some tape to reattach this paper around the hole. Okay. And again, this doesn't have to be precise, but you just want to make sure that your hole is decently big, that the paper is not separating from where the hole is, and that you've got no cardboard sticking at the end that's kind of flush here. So in the end, your hole should kind of look like this. Next, we're going to take our sheet of wax paper. And you can cut it down to size if it's not already. We want it to be about 4 inches by 4 inches. But again, as long as it's not too small, the size does not have to be precise. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to tape this to the outside of your box. And you're going to want to make it flush with the side that the hole is on. And you kind of want to stretch it and press it so that it's as flush with that hole as possible. And then tape it into place right here. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So you can see that I've now got tape on all 4 sides of my wax paper, like so. And then I'm going to stretch it over this hole here and tape it into place, ensuring that I can see the whole hole through that wax paper there. And once you've got that done, it should look like this. Now, we're going to flip our box around to the other short side, around here. And we're going to cut another hole into this side. Try to make it completely centered with the square hole that you made on the other side. In other words, they should be directly across from each other, and they shouldn't be up, down, or left, right. They should be directly across from each other. You can poke a hole in the box with scissors, and then we're going to make a medium-sized circular hole. Once again, this does not have to be precise as long as it's sort of flat and there's no cardboard in the way. And you can use tape to secure the paper to the box around where you make this hole. So I will do that now. I'm going to kind of identify, I might even use my ruler to help me figure out what is directly across from the hole that I made. I think it's about here. Poke through. Again, careful with your hands on the other side. There we are. So, once again, I poked through the inside of the box. And this hole does not need to be as big as the hole we made previously. So I'm even going to try to just like twist the scissors in there and push my finger through to be able to make the hole. And then I'll pull some of this cardboard out. Clean up the edges. And clean up the edges on the inside. Remove the paper that's in the way. And then once again, you can tape it. But for me, the paper is not really separating from where the hole is, thankfully. So I can go ahead and leave it without having to add any tape on the inside, as long as you can see through the hole. So you can see now I've got my small hole on the front of the box like so. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut another 4 inch by 4 inch piece of aluminum foil if it's not already cut down for you. And just like before, we're gonna tape this to the outside of the box, covering where this hole is. Again, you wanna stretch it and make sure it's flat and that no cardboard is getting in the way. So I'll go ahead and do that now. This one, you wanna make sure that it gets a full seal with the hole. So that should mean that it's pressed pretty tightly up against the cardboard and no light is able to leak through into the hole around the aluminum foil. So I'm gonna place it like this when I tape it, kind of get it as pressed flat as possible. You can see I've got it taped on like so, and I can see on the other side that no light is making it through this hole from where the aluminum foil is. All right. So for up until this step, you should now have a hole with your wax paper on one side and a hole with your aluminum foil covering it on the other side. Next, I'll set our box aside temporarily. And I'm going to grab the plastic cup. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use scissors to cut the bottom of our cup out. So again, be careful with this. I'm going to poke through the bottom with my scissors. Again, washing your hands, don't hit your hands. I'm cutting through the bottom. And I'm just going to cut around the bottom of the cup. You can see now I've kind of got this like plus shape, and I can just pull on the bottom to take out the paper. All right. So there we go. I now have my my paper cup with no bottom in it. And what you're gonna wanna do is take your box and identify the side with the wax paper. And you're gonna wanna take the hole that you just made and place it in the center of the wax paper where that hole is and tape it in place here. So I'm gonna take some tape. And what this is going to do is this is going to reduce glare on our wax paper from all directions. So I'll place the cup with that hole directly in the middle, and I'll place some tape on the cup, and I'll show you how this looks in just one moment. But again, make sure that that hole is centered with the hole in the box. And you can see now, if I show you, the box has this cup on the side, and the hole is in the center of that cup. And now you're just gonna wanna place tape all around this base to make sure that no light leaks in. And the reason for this is because our camera is going to be capturing our external light from a very specific source. So if we're letting in any light from around the camera, it might interfere with our ability to see that light from the specific source, which is the image that we want to capture. So I'm just adding my tape around the cup. And again, it does not have to be precise, but you can see now that I have the cup kind of secured like so. And once again, I can see the hole through the side. Now we will move on to our final and most important part of this project. Grab your push pin and turn it to the side of the box with the aluminum foil right here. In order for your camera to work, we want to create a hole which is as small and as circular as possible. So we can do this with two steps. First, you're going to want to identify where the hole is underneath the aluminum foil. So I'm just going to feel around until I can identify right about here. That's where the hole is in the aluminum foil behind the box. Or sorry, where the hole in the box is behind the aluminum foil. So you're going to want to push the pin barely, not even reaching. You'll see if there's on the pin, it has like the sharp tip and then the rest of the pin. You're not even going to want to get down to the full width of this pin. You're simply going to want to pierce the aluminum foil with the very, very tip to break through. And then you're going to want to carefully remove the pin without rotating or turning it or tilting it, as we want to keep the hole as straight and as circular as possible. So I'll go ahead and do that now. I've identified where the hole in the box is. And anywhere in that hole, I'm just going to place the tip. I'm going to make a very, very small hole. and I'm going to remove the push pin. So yep, I can confirm there's a very, very small hole made with just the tip of the push pin, and I removed it without wiggling it too much, so it stayed as small as possible. And so when completed, you should now have a hole in the aluminum foil, and your pinhole camera should look like this with all of that black paper on the inside. Now that we're done building, we're ready to test our pinhole camera. To test, first we need to turn off all of the lights in our room and close all of the windows. If the windows still let in some light, we'll need to test in the darkest part of the room, or you may need to have the students test later when they get home. Then you need to create a bright focal point for us to look at. So you can use a flashlight, a bright monitor, or a lamp and place it far away in a corner of the room. Then what you should do is you should take your pinhole camera and point the lens, which is going to be our aluminum foil side with the hole in it. And you're going to point that at the focal point that you've created, and everything else should be dark. And then you should look through the cup at the wax paper and be able to see an image fall onto the wax paper. We won't be able to demonstrate it here because you can't see the effect through a camera. But while testing, what you can do is if you're not seeing an image, you can tilt it to try to get the image to land on your wax paper, and you can move the pinhole camera closer and further from your face while looking at the wax paper, and that will sort of focus the image that you're looking at. Then you should be able to see the image that you're looking through cast onto the wax paper, and it should appear to be upside down, which is due to how the pinhole camera works with physics. So if your pinhole camera is not working, there are some things that you can try. So first, ensure that the room is dark enough to see the image being projected, and you may need to cover any windows with a jacket or a blanket. And additionally, if you are using a projector, the white screen of the projector might reflect too much light and brighten the room. So instead, you can use a laptop or a phone as the focal point that you can be looking at. Another issue may be with pinhole. So ensure that the hole completely punctures the aluminum foil, and that is both small and straight. You can also shine a light through the hole to ensure that you can see it on the wax on the other side, and it will just look like a bright light, but that should mean that if you're casting the image properly in a dark room, it should work. And you should also make sure that the hole on the left side is lined up with your wax paper on the right. You can also try to make the hole for the wax paper much bigger, cover much more of the side of the box, and use a larger side of wax paper, which will give the image more space to land on. The only downside with that is that the wax paper will let more light into the inside of the camera, so you need to make sure that you're in a dark room for that to work. So lastly, you can also make sure that there's nothing inside of the box, such as paper pieces or foil, that might be blocking the light or falling in the way. And again, make sure that the light has a full path of travel from the lens from our aluminum foil all the way to the wax paper on the other side. Now that we're done testing, let's talk about how our pinhole camera works. Here, we are making a very small opening for light to travel through, and believe it or not, light moves. It does not just exist in the space around us. So when we see things with our eyes, light has to travel through space to land onto our eyes. So with our camera, and we're using it to create an image, at the front, our pinhole is being used as a lens. And a lens captures light coming in at only very specific angles. So light coming from above the camera enters this hole at the top and is just directed straight through that hole. Same with light coming from the bottom is directed through the top and going straight. And light from one focal point in the world around us is coming in at all angles and being reflected through that hole. But light from the side or from other random angles cannot get through that hole. And so that's why we don't just see bright light coming into the camera, we actually see an image of the focal point that we're looking at. The reason that our lens has to be so small is because if it were larger, light from other angles would be able to get in too, and it would look overexposed or it would just look white. So after entering the lens, like I said, light travels through the box at the same angle that it entered, and it hits the wax paper. And the wax paper is partially transparent, which allows us to both have a surface for the light to land on while also being able to see it through the paper. So you may have noticed also that the image appears upside down if you were able to get your Pinhole camera to work when looking at your image, especially if you put something like a picture on a laptop monitor, it will look upside down. And the reason for this is because the light coming from the top, like I said, continues straight and lands at the bottom of the wax paper. Same for light coming from the bottom, comes through the Pinhole camera, through the pinhole, and lands at the top of the wax paper. So everything looks like it's flipped upside down. So lastly, when we're moving the box forwards and backwards, we are changing the angle that the light is able to enter the box, which allows us to focus the image on the wax paper, almost as if we were using a real camera. So if you've used a real camera, you can focus with the lens, or if you've used a phone camera, you may have tapped and you can see that it kind of focuses on whatever you tapped on. That's the same thing when we're moving the box, it's changing the angle that that light is coming through that pinhole, which is changing how it looks on our wax paper. So now that we know how our Pinhole camera works, here are some things that you can think about with your students. So first, what do we need to put into our Pinhole camera in order to capture this image that we're seeing instead of it just being temporary? Also, why is the image upside down? Why does the image change if we move the box around? And how could we turn our Pinhole camera into a real-world camera?